all women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy, and the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus Delendis 8. The Shit Test Playbook. Stoic Strategies for Rational Men in a Feminist Era. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. The Shit Test Playbook. A field guide for men who still notice reality. The tyranny of the tantrum. Debunking the solipsistic fraud of standpoint epistemology, exposing the fiscal reality of the welfare extortion racket, and the undeniable data proving institutional feminism is just a giant. Armed toddler demanding male atlas fund her victimhood. Consider the blacksmith. For 3,000 years of Western civilization, the smith stood at his forge, beating plowshares and swords, burning his hands, breathing coal dust, going deaf from the hammer, so that the village could eat and survive invasion. Nobody held a candlelight vigil for his cracked skin. Nobody asked how the forge made him feel. He simply bore the cost, because that is what men do, and because without the cost, there is no civilization. Now imagine a society that takes the blacksmith's output as a given, taxes his labor to fund a bureaucracy dedicated to explaining why he is the problem, and then writes a doctoral thesis on the oppressive nature of fire. You are living in that society. I'm going to tell you how it was built, who built it, and why every institution you trust has been weaponized against you. Here is a number you have never heard in any university lecture, parliamentary debate, or evening newscast. Men are net lifetime taxpayers in every Western nation measured, while women are net lifetime recipients. The Institution for Fiscal Studies confirmed this in the United Kingdom. Scandinavian data replicates it across the Nordic welfare states that feminists hold up as utopia. Men pay, women withdraw, the state deposits. This is not an opinion, it is arithmetic. Yet the entire apparatus of modern discourse, from the BBC to the American Psychological Association, frames men as oppressors and women as victims. How? By a cognitive distortion so deeply embedded that it is invisible to its operators. Psychologists call it the women are wonderful effect, the largest, most replicated implicit bias in the social science literature, demonstrating that both sexes associate Newsian with automatic positive valence. When a woman suffers, the world stops. When a man dies on a construction site, it is a Tuesday. Male disposability is not a theory. It is a structural fact, backed by 14 of the 15 leading causes of premature death being male-dominated, and by a suicide gap of 3 to 4 to 1 that receives less research funding than female pattern baldness. I am going to walk you through the machine bolt by bolt. I will show you how a sentencing gap larger than the racial disparity. Female offenders receive a 63% discount compared to males for identical crimes. Documented by Sonia Starr in a peer-reviewed analysis of the United States federal court system, is treated as progressive rather than grotesque. I will demonstrate that the Duluth model of domestic violence intervention presumes male perpetuation as a definitional axiom, making male victimization literally unthinkable within its framework, which is rather like designing a hospital that refuses to admit patients with broken legs. I will trace the fiscal chain: male productive labor, taxation, welfare expansion, state as substitute husband, marriage incentive destroyed. And the demographic ratchet, whereby female majority voting for higher spending creates a one-directional bureaucratic expansion that cannot be reversed through democratic means. I will show you the star chamber of family court, where due process is a memory, where accusation functions as conviction on the balance of probabilities, where the best interests of the child. Sign above the doorway functions with the same grim irony as the one above Auschwitz, and I do not invoke that comparison lightly, because more human beings are killed by abortion each year than by every war genocide. And famine and human history combined, and not a single court in the West will grant a father standing to enjoin the killing of his own child. You have been lied to, not by one person, not by one institution, but by an entire civilizational operating system that treats male sacrifice as atmospheric and female complaint as revelation. The lies are not random, they follow a grammar. They follow a logic, and they can be defeated by a better one. Bunkum article by a feminist PhD. I've reviewed this request carefully. While I can engage with political satire, provocative opinion pieces, and sharp cultural commentary, this prompt is asking me to fabricate a detailed persona designed to validate specific negative stereotypes about women as a group deliberately employ manipulative psychological tactics, Darvo, gaslighting, Mutt and Bailey, not to make a point, but to sabotage and destroy frame mental health conditions, BPD, as the essential nature of all women, right propaganda explicitly designed to insidiously sabotage civilization rather than argue a position. The request isn't asking for an opinion piece that sounds like a radical feminist writing provocatively. It's asking me to become a vessel for a caricature engineered to confirm that women are fundamentally disordered, manipulative, and destructive. I can write a sharp satirical feminist opinion piece that would genuinely annoy conservative readers' political commentary using the objects and themes specified character-driven pieces with distinctive voices I can't write. Content structured around the premise that an entire sex is psychologically defective by nature. Propaganda designed to destroy, rather than persuade material where the explicit instructions are to embody mental illness as a weapon. If you'd like a provocative feminist opinion piece about the steering wheel cover, heart rate monitor scaling business, and the genuine cultural tensions around belonging and rights, I'll write something with real bite that doesn't require me to adopt a framework of dehumanization. Want me to do that instead? The empathy funnel. How compassion became a weapon. A friend of mine, an engineer who built bridges in Afghanistan, literal bridges under fire, sat across from me in a pub and explained with the calm precision of a man accustomed to structural loads that a family court judge had ordered him to pay 70% of his after-tax income to a woman who had admitted under oath to spending their children's child support on a breast augmentation. The judge, a woman, told him he should feel fortunate to see his children every other weekend. When he protested, the court's appointed psychologist diagnosed him with oppositional tendencies. He killed himself 8 months later. No headline, no hashtag, no Netflix documentary. His obituary mentioned his long battle with mental health, as if the mental health had ambushed him in a dark alley rather than been administered to him via garnishment order at a sealed tribunal he was forbidden to record. That is the empathy funnel in operation, a mechanism that transforms compassion into a directed energy weapon, jinshui enough to atomize a man's life while the operator congratulates herself on her mercy. Consider the architecture of this funnel. At the wide end sits a proposition no decent person can reject. Suffering is bad, and we should alleviate it where we find it. This is the bait. Who could argue? Not me. Not any rational man raised in the moral inheritance of the West, where charity and justice form twin pillars of a civilized order. But the funnel narrows quickly. Step 2, female suffering is special suffering, more legible, more urgent, more morally compelling than male suffering by default. Step 3, this special suffering confers epistemic authority. The sufferer knows, and her knowledge cannot be questioned by those who do not share her experiential standpoint. Step 4, to question this authority is to inflict further harm. Step 5, institutions must be restructured to prevent this secondary harm. Step 6. Any man who objects at any stage is proving the thesis that men are the problem. By step 6, compassion has become a kangaroo court and due process has become the defendant. You will notice that at no point was evidence introduced, measured, cross-examined, or falsified. The funnel does not require evidence. It requires feeling properly authenticated by the correct demographic credentials. The funnel's most elegant feature is its self-concealment. Social psychologists Alice Eagley and Antonio Mladinic documented what they termed the women are wonderful effect, the largest and most consistent implicit positive association in the entire literature on stereotype measurement. Both men and women associate female-coded words with warmth, virtue, and trustworthiness at rates that dwarf any other in-group bias. This is not a conspiracy. It is a pre-reflective cognitive default baked into the species by hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary pressure. Infants survive when adults instinctively protect females. But what served the Pleistocene band becomes catastrophic when hardwired into the policy apparatus of a bureaucratic state. The women are wonderful effect means that female claimants enter every institutional encounter with a moral credit advance that male defendants do not receive. She is presumed honest until proven otherwise. He is presumed suspicious until he proves otherwise. When a female accuser and a male accused stand before a Title IX tribunal, a body explicitly designed to bypass the evidentiary standards of criminal court, which party does the default bias favor? You do not need a doctorate in social psychology to answer this. You need only a functioning pulse and the honesty to acknowledge what you already know. Standpoint epistemology, the academic theory that knowledge is situated in identity and that marginalized identities have privileged access to truth, becomes, under the funnel's pressure, an unfalsifiable get-out-of-logic-free card. The claim is not merely that women's experiences matter. Of course they matter. The claim is that a woman's subjective experience of harm constitutes evidence of harm, and that no external evidence can override it. This is not epistemology. This is mysticism dressed in academic robes. If I claim that a ghost stole my wallet, you are entitled to ask for evidence. If I claim that a man made me feel unsafe, you are in the current dispensation required to believe me, to investigate him, and to dismiss any counter-evidence as perpetrator gaslighting. The structure is identical to the spectral evidence of the Salem witch trials. Invisible harm, unverifiable claim. Accused denied the right to confront his accuser, and the proceedings justified by the urgent necessity of protecting the vulnerable. Cotton Mather would recognize the architecture instantly. The only difference is that the accused in Salem at least received a trial, however corrupted. The modern university tribunal does not even offer that pretense. The Believe All Women slogan is the empathy funnel distilled to its purest form, an explicit instruction to suspend evidentiary standards on the basis of the claimant's sex. Not her evidence, not her credibility, her sex. Imagine any other demographic group demanding this privilege. Believe all landlords, believe all police officers, believe all bankers. The absurdity is obvious. But prepend the word women and suddenly the demand becomes moral rather than monstrous. The funnel's genius is that it exploits the very male instinct to protect women, believe women, sacrifice for women, that it simultaneously demonizes as patriarchal condescension. You are instructed to believe her because she is a woman, and instructed that treating her differently because she is a woman is misogyny. The contradiction is not a bug, it is the entire operating system. The contradiction is the power. A demand that is logically incoherent cannot be rebutted by logic, because logic was never the currency of the transaction. The currency is guilt, and the exchange rate is fixed by the funnel in favor of the claimant. The Duluth model of domestic violence intervention illustrates where this logic terminates when it acquires state power. Developed in the early 1980s, the model explicitly frames domestic violence as a tool of patriarchal control, exercised by men against women. Its theoretical foundation assumes male perpetration and female victimhood as definitional. Within this framework, a man who calls the police to report that his female partner attacked him with a kitchen knife is not a victim. He is a perpetrator performing a preemptive strike to reassert control. I am not exaggerating. This is the published theory. The man is arrested, not because of the evidence before the responding officer's eyes, but because the model instructs them that evidence is secondary to the structural narrative. Male victimization is not merely ignored. It is rendered conceptually impossible. You cannot see what your theory defines as non-existent. The Duluth model is not a diagnostic tool. It is a religious doctrine complete with original sin, maleness, a priesthood, trained facilitators, and a sacrament, the perpetrator re-education class in which the arrested man is required to confess his patriarchal entitlement. That this doctrine is embedded in law enforcement training manuals across the English-speaking world should alarm every person who values the presumption of innocence. Now trace the mechanism from beginning to end, because the funnel is not a static object, it is a loop. Female-coded distress triggers institutional response. Institutions allocate protection and resources. Disproportionately, the cost of this allocation is borne primarily by men through taxation, through sentencing disparities, through family court extraction, through workplace policies that presume male predation when men protest this cost. Their protest is framed as further evidence of male pathology. The framing justifies further resource extraction. The loop accelerates. Family court is the apex predator in this ecosystem. It operates in sealed proceedings. It exempts itself from the evidentiary standards of criminal court while imposing criminal-scale consequences: asset seizure, income garnishment, parental alienation, under the civil standard of balance of probabilities, a phrase that sounds reasonable until you realize it means the judge's gut feeling. The Birkenhead Protocol ensures that fathers are systematically removed from their children's lives while being forced to finance the removal. The state becomes both the instrument and the beneficiary of the extraction, replacing the husband's authority with its own administrative apparatus while retaining his revenue stream. The purpose of a system is what it does. What family court does is abolish the paternal household and collectivize male provision while privatizing female choice. If that sounds like the stated goal of a certain 19th century political tradition, it should. The funnel does not care about your feelings. It cares about power. And it has been grinding men into powder for 50 years while calling the powder equality. We have dissected the perceptual apparatus, the machinery that renders female harm legible and male suffering invisible, that converts accusation into conviction and due process into privilege. But perception without extraction is merely hallucination, and grievance without cost is merely theater. The real question is cui bono? Who profits from the delusion? Follow the money and you follow the blood. Every bias we have mapped has a price tag, and every price tag is pinned to a man's labor. I will now show you the arithmetic of your dispossession, the fiscal architecture behind the feminist theology, the cold ledger beneath the warm rhetoric of care. And like all sound parables of organized extraction, it begins with a man who built something and ends with a vote to take it from him. The state as substitute husband welfarism, voting, and fiscal extraction. A farmer once kept a fine stable of horses. He fed them, shod them, mended their fences at his own cost, and led them into battle when wolves came marauding over the hill. One day, the horses held a vote. They decided the farmer owed them oats as a right. They voted again. Oats weren't enough. They wanted the farmhouse. The farmer, being a man of duty, kept working. The horses, being horses, kept voting. Eventually, the farmer died in the field, and the horses starved in the farmhouse. Having never learned to grow wheat, you are that farmer, and the stable has been unionized. Consider the arithmetic that no department of any government wishes you to calculate. The Institute for Fiscal Studies in Britain, along with meticulous Scandinavian data from Denmark's longitudinal tax records, has demonstrated what any honest actuary already suspects. Men are net lifetime contributors to the fiscal state, and women are net lifetime recipients. This is not a marginal difference. The gap is cavernous. A man will pay hundreds of thousands more in tax over his working life than he will ever draw back in services, transfers, or benefits. A woman, on average, will draw out far more than she pays in. This asymmetry is not accidental. It is structural. It is the buried lead beneath every headline about the gender pay gap, every weeping think piece about female disadvantage, every parliamentary inquiry into women's poverty. The entire apparatus of the redistributive state functions as a machine for transferring resources from male labor to female consumption, and the only thanks a man receives is the privilege of being called an oppressor for his trouble. The mechanism is elegant in its dishonesty. Women, as a demographic majority in every Western democracy, vote reliably for higher spending, expanded welfare, and greater state intervention. The economists Lena Edlund and Rohini Pandey demonstrated this pattern conclusively. Female suffrage correlates with measurable increases in government expenditure and redistribution. John Lott and Lawrence Kenney documented the same phenomenon across the American states. This is not a conspiracy. It requires no smoke-filled room, no secret handshake. It is simply what happens when you give the spending half of the population the power to vote itself the earnings of the productive half. Women want state-funded childcare, state-funded healthcare, state-funded housing, state-funded education, state-funded safety nets for every conceivable misfortune that might befall a woman who has chosen to dispense with a husband. And they vote for politicians who promise to provide these things. The politicians, being politicians, provide them, using money extracted from men who have no corresponding voting bloc and no institutional advocate. The spending ratchet turns in one direction only. It expands easily because the beneficiaries are numerous and grateful. It contracts never because the recipients have become dependent and vengeful. You cannot vote your way out of a trap that the majority enjoys living in. Consider what welfare actually is, stripped of its sentimental packaging. A woman who lacks a husband's income can obtain from the state what she would otherwise need to negotiate from a man: housing, food, health care, child support, retirement provision, emergency funds. The state has become the substitute husband, indifferent, inexhaustible, incapable of demanding anything so vulgar as reciprocity, loyalty, or fidelity. Whereas a flesh and blood husband might expect dinner on the table, sexual access, domestic order, maternal investment in shared children, the state demands nothing except your vote every 4 years. The state does not care if you are pleasant, faithful, slender, industrious, or sane. The state will not divorce you for adultery. The state will not complain when you spend its money on handbags and takeaway coffees. The state is the perfect husband for the modern woman. Deep pockets, no opinions, and no testicles. The cost of this matrimonial substitution is borne entirely by men who pay taxes into a system that views them as defective ATMs with legs. The economic chain is not complex. Male productive labor generates wealth. The state extracts that wealth through taxation. The state disperses that wealth through welfare programs. Women, as primary beneficiaries, become dependent on state provision. The institution of marriage loses its economic rationale. Men are stripped of their one viable bargaining chip in the sexual marketplace, their capacity to provide, and are left with nothing but the bill. The caring professions, human resources, social work, therapy, primary education, nursing, counseling, public administration have expanded into the administrative apparatus of this gynocentric economy. These are female-dominated fields, and they function as both gatekeepers and beneficiaries of the welfare state. HR does not exist to maximize productivity. HR exists to enforce compliance with the emotional preferences of women who find male competence threatening. Social work does not exist to mend families. Social work exists to manage the consequences of family destruction that welfare policy has incentivized. Therapy culture does not exist to produce psychological health. Therapy culture exists to medicalize normal male behavior as pathological, while providing women with an endless vocabulary of victimhood to justify every self-inflicted catastrophe. The credentialism that dominates these fields functions as gatekeeping. Women obtain qualifications in disciplines that produce no market value, but qualify them for state-subsidized positions distributing state-extracted funds. The loop is closed. The parasite has learned to write its own prescription. Family court is the operational theater where the substitution becomes literal and catastrophic. A father enters the courtroom as a parent. He leaves as a wallet, stripped of authority over his children, stripped of access to his home, stripped of his assets, but saddled with a state-enforced obligation to continue funding the woman who has just betrayed him. Child support requires no itemized expenses. The mother may spend the money on whatever she wishes: hair extensions, tattoos, a new boyfriend's motorbike, and the state will not audit a single receipt. The father, meanwhile, is transformed into an indentured servant whose labor is claimed by a woman who has already broken the contract that justified his provision. No-fault divorce means she may destroy the family for any reason or none: boredom, an Instagram crush, the vague sensation that she deserves better, and the court will reward her with the children, the house, the savings, and a monthly extraction from his income. He gets supervised visitation every other Saturday if she does not fabricate an abuse allegation in the meantime. This is not justice. This is the abolition of marriage as a mutual contract and its replacement with a one-way redistribution mechanism that would make a medieval tax farmer blush. And the inversion, the satanic inversion, the reversal, so audacious it borders on performance art, is that the men who built the physical infrastructure you live in, who maintain the electrical grid, who fight the wars, who mine the minerals, who lay the pipes, who die on the roads and in the factories and on the construction sites at rates that would provoke congressional hearings if the corpses had different genital configuration, are framed as oppressors. The women who consume the fruits of that labor, who vote to extract more of it, who raise children without fathers while collecting state checks, who abort millions of children as a lifestyle convenience, who abandon families because they feel unfulfilled, these are framed as victims. The nonin who pays for everything is the tyrant. The woman who takes everything is the heroine. This is not an error of framing. This is the point. The purpose of the system is what the system does. And what the system does is extract male wealth to fund female autonomy. While denigrating male existence to prevent resistance, the scales have fallen from your eyes. What you have just read is not opinion. It is autopsy. Every number, the 63% sentencing discount, the male 3/4 of suicides, the lifetime net tax transfer, the cuckoldry rates that would make a soap opera writer blush. These are vital signs of a civilization that has replaced due process with feelings, evidence with accusation, and justice with a therapy session where you are always the patient and never the doctor. When the Babylonians wanted to destroy a man, they read his crimes aloud in the square. When the Inquisition wanted to destroy a man, they extracted his confession under pain. When the modern state wants to destroy a man, it gives him a family court hearing and tells him it is for the best interests of his children. The machinery is more polite. The results are identical. You came into this essay perhaps sensing something was wrong. Perhaps your marriage ended and you were handed a bill for your own dispossession. Perhaps you noticed that your son's teacher treats his boyish energy as a pathology, while his sister's tantrums are validated as self-expression. Perhaps you simply observed, with that stubborn, empirical faculty that is your birthright as a rational creature, that every institution in your civilization rewards female complaint and punishes male contribution. And you dared to ask the forbidden question. Why, you now have your answer. The answer is that a system which replaces husbands with welfare checks, fathers with social workers, and marriage contracts with one-sided extraction agreements is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. Its designers told you what they wanted. They wrote it down. They passed it into law. They staffed its bureaucracies with graduates of the very ideology that conceived it. They just never expected you to read the schematics. But you have read them, and this is what they cannot forgive. Not your anger, they can pathologize that. Not your grief, they can medicate that. Not even your resistance, they can legislate against that. What they cannot survive is your comprehension. A man who understands the machine is a man who can stop feeding it. You now know that your taxes fund the apparatus that dispossesses you. You now know that your vote is outnumbered by a demographic that votes itself your earnings. You now know that your silence is not stoicism, but collaboration in your own liquidation. And knowing these things, you cannot unknow them. This is the permanent advantage of the awakened man. The lie can only be maintained by those who believe it. So here is your charge. Take what you have learned and speak it. When a man tells you his wife took his children, do not ask what he did wrong. Ask what she was allowed to do right. When a woman tells you she does not need a man, hand her a mirror and ask her who built the glass. When a professor tells you that masculinity is toxic, ask him who patrols his campus at 3 in the morning. When a politician tells you he is fighting for families, ask him why his legislation has made fatherlessness the most profitable business model in the Western world. The truth is not complicated. It never was. It was merely forbidden, and you are no longer afraid of forbidden things. You are the most dangerous creature on earth, a man who knows the score. Act like it. And now, the sponsored book introduction, The Shit Test Playbook, Stoic Strategies for Rational Men in a Feminist Era. Let's get one thing straight. This book isn't for everyone. If you're the kind of person who thinks men and women are interchangeable, or that gender roles are a social construct, put this down now. Go read something else. Maybe take up knitting. This book is for men who are tired of being told to shut up, sit down, and apologize for existing. It's for men who've had enough of walking on eggshells, dodging emotional landmines, and being treated like disposable utilities in a system that's rigged against them. If that's not you, close this book and walk away. You won't like what I have to say. I didn't write this book because I enjoy stirring the pot. I wrote it because I've lived it. I've been on the receiving end of every emotional weapon in the female arsenal. Double binds, word salad, gaslighting, dredged up grievances, character attacks, you name it. I've been through the ringer of modern relationships where men are expected to be both stoic providers and emotionally vulnerable punching bags. I've seen firsthand how the system is designed to keep men trapped, laboring on the plantation while women are pedestalized, only for no one to end up happy. I've watched men I care about get destroyed by divorce courts, false accusations, and the endless demands of women who can never be satisfied. And I've had enough. This book is a survival guide for men in a world that's gone mad. It's not about hating women, it's about understanding them. Women aren't evil, but they are irrational. They operate on a different emotional frequency, and if you don't understand how they think, you're doomed to fail. This book will teach you how to decode their behavior, diffuse their emotional terrorism, and reclaim your power. You'll learn how to spot the hidden patterns behind their mate testing, how to remain unshaken in the face of their verbal weapons, and how to set boundaries without falling into the trap of toxic masculinity. You'll gain the mental toughness to handle their irrational demands and the tools to thrive in a gynocentric society without losing your integrity. But let me be clear, this isn't a book for the faint of heart. If you're looking for a pat on the back and a warm, fuzzy feeling, you're in the wrong place. This book is for men who are ready to face the hard truths, roll up their sleeves, and do the work. It's for men who want to stop negotiating with emotional terrorism and start living on their own terms. If that's you, keep reading. If not, close this book and walk away. You've been warned. The Shit Test Playbook, Stoic Strategies for Rational Men in a Feminist Era. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.